Where are those damned humans? It's been almost a week with no word nor report from them. Commander Tyron of the Fae exclaimed in a mix of anger and frustration. They will come, my lord, I can guarantee it, Maester Olver said, though he himself was unsure. The defense of this pass will end all that we know. The Legion will burn every inch of this land. They better have a good reason for this delay, because I will tear them anew. Send flyers, and send a messenger for good measure, said Commander Tyron. But the birds might be enough, Maester Olver objected. We have tried many times before with no success. It's to Commander Tyron was cut short as the door leading to the meeting opened abruptly. A soldier clad in leather and a simple linen hood burst through, catching his breath. The blacks are here. Faerun Pass. 300 years have passed since our ancestors crossed the Aesir range to find our home. The Black Legion, our ancient enemy, destroyed our ancestors' home, and now they are once again threatening ours. Every year they send waves of soldiers and monsters against us. The very first nearly destroyed our home if not for a defiant last stand at Lydim, the Fae capital, and the reinforcements from the humans breaking the siege. Together, we pushed them back. We constructed a fort right at the foot of the Aesir mountain range, Fort Truinus. The walls were as tall as large trees, 300 kilometers long, 3 sets of walls, over 20,000 soldiers stationed, human-made siege engines lined the walls, fully stocked with food to withstand a siege for 10 years. This fort was impregnable to an ordinary army. The blacks were anything but ordinary. Unlike the past attacks of the Black Legion, over 200,000 soldiers and monsters were marching to the pass, the largest attacking force ever seen. Flyers were sent all over. Felonous, Draconian, Fae, Dwarves, all answered the call, except for the humans. The number of soldiers in the fort ramped up to 50,000. We were still outnumbered, but with the walls and defenses, it was enough. Will we be able to hold here, my lord? Asked the Maester. We must, answered Commander Tyron. Day 1. The Black Legion attacked the walls today. Soldiers scaled the fortifications while monsters relentlessly assaulted the gate. The battle was brief, lasting about an hour, and we managed to repel the attackers, though we lost 30 brave souls. It was clear that the enemy only sent cannon fodder to test our defenses. They are not foolish. We must prepare for a more formidable assault. Day 2. They attacked again, but this time their forces concentrated on our right flank, where the dwarves are stationed. Soldiers swarmed the wall, and this time there were monsters with them. The dwarves managed to hold the wall long enough for me to send reinforcements their way. 2,000 soldiers died today, and a breakthrough was narrowly avoided. I wonder how long we can hold. Those humans are still nowhere to be found. Day 3. Their numbers know no end. They attacked at dawn. Assassins scaled the wall and ambushed the soldiers as patrols were switching. The main body attacked the walls accompanied by giants. I had to commit some of my reserves just to hold the walls. The giant monsters were taken down by artillery, but the walls suffered significant damage. Cracks had already formed in some places. I must see to the repairs by tomorrow and double the sentry patrols. The first wall might hold for a while longer, if we are lucky. Day 4. Another attack. A monstrous construct made of bone appeared over the horizon. Boulders and trees, it threw everything at us. Many were injured. Soldiers were getting pinned down, unable to peek over the walls. Soon the assault stopped, but blacks were already scaling the wall as we tried to get our bearings. We lost the right flank and were on the brink of a rout if not for a concentrated bombardment from the siege engines. We barely held the walls. Maybe it is time to abandon the first wall. Day 5. Right before dawn. It started again. Boulders flew over our heads, some hitting the walls themselves. The ground shook every time one of the boulders met the ground. This time they did not attack, rather, they bombarded our walls for hours, well into the night. Day 6. The bombardment finally stopped. I think neither the men nor I got a wink of sleep. The men were sleepy and groggy, but they were awakened by a sea of black. Siege towers appeared on the battlefield, tall as our walls if not taller. A valiant defense, but it was in vain. The blacks pushed us back in a relentless tide of soldiers and monsters. Men were dying left and right. The walls ran red with our blood. The first wall was breached, and by the sunset on the horizon, we lost it. Still no word from our human allies. Day 7. This day was quiet. The blacks did not assault our walls. The eerie silence unnerved me. My gut told me something was wrong. I lost more than 10,000 soldiers dead, 3,000 injured, and a few hundred missing. The second wall was stronger than the first, we still had a chance to beat them back. Day 8. Another bombardment. Nothing of note happened today. Day 9. Another bombardment. Still no attacks. They were up to something, I am sure of it. Something was wrong. I just could not put my finger on it. Day 10. Another bombardment. It only lasted an hour. The blacks were just standing there in formation. They were not attacking. I had just set up my defense. 10,000 were on the wall, ready to repel their attack, when it happened. A huge explosion on multiple fronts. There were now multiple breaches in the walls. The blacks charged in through the gaps. This was their plan. It was chaos. Pockets of my soldiers valiantly fought for their survival. Soon the battle turned into a rout, and soldiers scrambled to get to the gate. Many would not get through. Day 11. The blacks mocked us, they devoured our comrades in front of our walls. Campfire smoke littered the landscape as the blacks cooked the flesh of the dead, stripping meat from bone. They laughed at us as they feasted. Bastards! I reassessed our situation, less than 30,000 men were left to defend the last wall. Even if we fought at our best, we would not last a week. It was only a matter of time, soon, without reinforcements, we would be overrun. Day 12. Word came, reinforcements, human. Commander Tyrn waited above the wall, looking out into the horizon. Reports said the humans would arrive as the sun set. Finally, he thought, relief washing over him. He saw the banner of humanity leave the green forest. Columns of humans slowly marched towards the wall. A man clad in iron armor shouted with authority, "I am Commander Ewan, we are reinforcements from humanity. Open the gates." The large gate creaked as it opened. The humans were greeted with men groaning in pain, some wrapped in bandages. Commander Tyrn met Commander Ewan in his personal room. At last, reinforcements. How many men have you brought? Commander Tyrn asked. 500 men, replied Commander Ewan. What? Commander Tyrn exclaimed, enraged. He slammed his fist onto the table. 500, 500. Is that all you send to me? Do you have any idea what is at stake here? If the blacks ever break through this wall, all you have ever known will burn. Do you understand? Ranted Commander Tyrn in rage. I understand. But do not worry, this battle is already won, Commander Ewan said with utmost confidence, not even a shred of doubt in his words. Ha! And how would you achieve that? Asked Commander Tyrn. Tomorrow, you shall see. Good night, Commander, said Commander Ewan as he exited the room. 500. Isn't it too few, my lord, especially when humans would fight in the thousands? Questioned Maester Olver. I had expected at least 10,000 men. We might not make it another week, worried Commander Tyrn. Get some sleep, Commander. You'll need it, said Maester Olver. Commander Tyrn nodded. He proceeded to his personal bedroom, closing the door behind him. He leaned against the wall, slowly sinking to the floor. I must be strong. I must not falter. I must believe. This wall will stand no matter what. It must, he said to himself. Chanting awakened Commander Tyrn. The sun had yet to break, he felt the cold air, shivering as it passed him. The chanting came from outside. He donned his armor and proceeded to investigate the sound. As he walked down the steps, the chanting grew louder and louder. Finally, he saw the source. Humans in formation, kneeling, facing the gate. 5 men clad in ornamented blue robes stood in front of the gate, holding what looked like lanterns, a mysterious white smoke emanating from them. Commander Tyrn was not the only one awakened from slumber. Curious soldiers peered at the humans. The men in blue robes walked through the gaps in the human formation, circling their lanterns over each human soldier. As the men in blue robes finished their ritual, the humans stood, only the sound of iron could be heard. Commander Tyrn approached Commander Ewan, who was in front of the formation. But before he could, the gates began to open. The soldiers atop the walls scrambled to the gatehouse. The gate had already opened, and the humans started to march in unison. Commander Tyrn shouted to Commander Ewan, "What are you doing? Are you mad?" Commander Ewan turned around just before the gates closed. Ending this. The gates closed with a great thump. Commander Tyrn and the soldiers were in shock. They scrambled to the walls to watch what would happen next. Commander Tyrn was worried. 500 men is 500 men. He could not afford to lose more, especially considering what was at stake. The outer walls were covered in a dense fog. All he could see were the 5 lanterns the men in blue hood had shining in the fog. Soon after, men shouted and clashing iron could be heard in the distance. He could not see much due to the fog, but one by one, the lanterns slowly lost their light, and the sounds of battle quieted down. Commander Tyrn feared the worst. Chanting once again could be heard. One of the lanterns was still flickering, though barely. The lanterns soon lost their light, and the chanting stopped. As the sun slowly peered over the mountain and the fog lifted, Commander Tyrn shook in fear. He saw what seemed to be a human soldier, but as it turned, its face was torn, showing bone. Another soldier stood, its arm gone but still it moved. Another and another, one by one, the dead stood, waiting. A soldier shouted, "Look, one of them survived," pointing at a single man in a blue robe. Commander Tyrn looked upon the man. He was holding what looked like a staff and a lantern. They were no priests, he thought to himself. He could see the large amount of mana gathering at the lantern. The men in blue were magicians. Human magicians were a thing of fantasy. There was no speck of mana on this side of the Aesir mountain, therefore magic was a fantasy to humanity. But when the blacks attacked, magic began to pour into this side. Humans, after only 10 years of studying magic, had already mastered and understood mana itself. New incantations and magic were being developed, and Commander Tyrn was watching the latest in human magic, necromancy. The sound of the blacks could be heard from a distance. A battle was about to begin. The dead were stuck close to the walls, awaiting orders. The air was tense. The soldiers atop the walls braced for what was coming. The blacks emerged from the rubble, shouting in an intimidating fashion. The blacks stopped in their tracks, an eerie silence overtook the battlefield. Time stood still. The soldiers atop the walls were confused, the blacks would have attacked by now. An ear-shattering shriek broke the silence. The dead lurched forward, attacking the blacks. The battle was fierce. The blacks would cut through swaths of undead, but they would simply get back up. A giant joined the battlefield, but not long after, it was swarmed by the undead. Like ants, they climbed the giant, piercing it in the eye, bringing it down. The battle raged on. At first, it was even, but now the undead slowly began to gain ground. The dead giant suddenly stood back up, as did the dead blacks. Commander Tyrn was in disbelief as the giants and dead blacks joined the undead and attacked the blacks. As the day turned to night, the battle could still be heard. By daybreak the next day, the dead had broken the 200,000-strong Black Legion and retaken the first wall. The magician approached Commander Tyron. "Our work here is done. I only need one more thing from you, my lord," the magician said. "What have you done? Are you really the only one left?" Commander Tyron asked. The magician replied. "How did you do this?" Commander Tyron asked, gesturing at the undead. "Sacrifice," the magician replied. Commander Tyron was shocked. The ritual he previously thought was for battle was, in fact, a ritual for death. Those 500 men marched to their death willingly. "And how do we dispel it?" Commander Tyron asked. "Death," the magician replied. Commander Tyron was taken aback. Closing his eyes and furrowing his brow, he drew his sword, for he understood what needed to be done. The battle was won.